How's this for a headline? This is from the Miami Herald. Millennials of color snubbed Hillary Clinton and have no regrets. What we clearly see in the focus groups is they don't regret what they did. They are millennials of color who either didn't vote or voted third party. And for Cornell Belcher, the president of Brilliant Corners Research and Strategies, who was the pollster for the Democratic National Committee under then-Chairman Howard Dean and for both Barack Obama's campaigns for the White House, this makes them the new swing voters the Democratic Party should be trying to win over. Belcher came to this conclusion after conducting focus groups commissioned by the Civic Engagement Fund in Milwaukee and Fort Lauderdale in May. The goal was to find out why young voters who previously voted for Obama either sat out the 2016 election or voted for one of the third-party candidates. The results were sobering. They are so outraged at the broken politics that they see on both sides, Belcher told me, that they really think that them protesting their vote makes both parties have to pay attention. And there is pointed ire at the Democratic Party. One participant was particularly blunt, quote, "You're damn right I don't have any loyalty to Democrats." A person of color said in a focus group in Fort Lauderdale, "If Republicans want to get real about shit that's happening in my community, I would vote for every one of them. Then maybe Democrats would take us serious too." We spend a lot of time talking about blue-collar white voters and Reagan Democrats. Reagan Democrats are dead, said Belcher, who believes efforts should be placed on winning black millennials of color and young progressive whites. Bringing that coalition back together would seem to make a lot more sense to me than trying to, in fact, bring in voters who have not been voting Democrat for quite some time. Okay, so this is interesting. And what did we learn here? So the Reagan Democrat, that's code word. That's code word for moderate Republicans or right-wing Democrats, Joe Manchin-style Democrats. And the Democratic Party has been married to this idea of corporate centrism, neoliberalism, which they think appeals to those kinds of voters. And so they run to the right, run to the right, run to the right, run to the right, every election. They never come away saying, man, we fucked up in that campaign. We should have went further left. They never say that, ever. In fact, even after Hillary Clinton lost, some of her aides came out and said, Bernie pushed us too far left, and that's why we lost. Are you fucking kidding? You really think that's why you lost? So, but I have good news for the Democrats, and I have good news for everybody. It's a false choice that you're being given. It's a false choice because there is no actual conflict between white working class voters and young minority voters. There's actually no conflict there. Now, you can say there's a conflict between the so-called Reagan Democrats, the Joe Manchin-style Democrats, and the rest of the Democrats. There's a conflict. But there is no conflict between your run-of-the-mill white working class voter and millennial communities of color. Now, why do I say that? I say that because of the polling. See, you're always given this false choice, this dichotomy of, here's the way the argument usually goes. People say, well, Bernie only wants to focus on the white working class voter. He doesn't care about young communities of color. And he wants to focus on economic issues instead of, race issues. And, yeah, that's his problem, whereas Hillary was too focused on, identity politics and young communities of color, and she wasn't focused enough on the class stuff and the white working class. But that's all just totally made up, because if you look at the polling data on both of those groups, young millennial communities of color and working class people, they want the same thing. White working class people, they want the same thing. They want Medicare for all. They want free college. They want a living wage. They want stronger unions. They want to end the wars. They want to stop the war on drugs. So why is this false choice perpetually being given to us? And the Democrats, by the way, don't take the path that would please both millennial communities of color and white working class people. They take the path that only their strategists tell them to go down, but nobody else who has a fucking brain tells them to go down, which is, oh, the Reagan Democrats, run further right, run further right, run further right. And there's also a myth that the so-called Reagan Democrat is the same thing as the white working class. It most certainly is not. It most certainly is not. A Reagan-style Democrat, so like a right-wing Democrat, that's like a Joe Manchin kind of character. There's very few of them in the country. Very few people are actually like Joe Manchin and agree with Joe Manchin. There's way more people who are progressive but don't even know it. Like, look at what happened with Bernie Sanders when he gave a town hall in West Virginia on MSNBC with Chris Hayes. It was a room full of Trump voters, and he got standing ovations when he spoke about free college and Medicare for all and a living wage, and he spoke about how we have to tax the rich and fight back against the corporations that have taken over our politics. A room full of Trump voters started cheering him and cheering his clearly populist left agenda. So there is no conflict between the white working class and millennials of color. There just isn't. You put millennials of color in the room, they're going to cheer the same things. Because it's not what people think it is. Like, oh, both sides want to play identity politics and only pander to their kind of person. No? What, young millennials don't give a shit about better wages? Don't give a shit about healthcare costs? Are you kidding me? Of course they do. What a fucking condescending, pedantic view to think like, no, young communities of color only want to hear about identity politics and only want you to speak to the concerns of only black people. That, ironically, is a kind of racist view. Like, what do you mean? I have to pander in order to get elected, right? Where are the blacks? Let me speak to the blacks. No, you talk about the issues that affect everybody, and people will vote for you. So, Democrats, as always, not getting it, and I love the surprise at this. Like, wow, it turns out that young millennials of color think politics in America is broken and they don't owe their vote to anybody. Wow, independent thinkers who view things objectively. Yeah, that shouldn't be surprising at all. And the answer is going in a populist left direction. You get the white working class, and you get young millennials of color, and you get a lot of crossover votes from the right. There's no losing if you go in that direction. JusticeDemocrats.com/fight.